Good. Take what you need. It's yours for a day.
Trinkets, odds and ends, that sort of thing.
Then I took an arrow in the knee.
Keep the song in your heart.
I'm asking.
May Talos guide you.
Staying out of trouble.
You stand.
Yes. Shoot. You play video games? And you're a girl?
That was cringy. Like, I got goosebumps from that. It's not the most cringy thing I've said. It's definitely not worse than my #1 most cringy thing ever.
All the single furries, 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 all the single furries. Now put your paws up. I'm just a pup, don't know how to stop. I'm shaking my own little tail. Decided to wag, had to.
Uh-oh. In partnership with everyday feminism. That might explain a few things. Like why this video is retarded.
Hey humans, so
Well, excuse you.
I've got a problem. I'm a really huge nerd, but I'm also a really huge feminist. Now,
Yeah, being a feminist is a problem, isn't it?
I know that doesn't sound like a problem. I mean, after all, they're completely unrelated things.
Well, feminism corrupts everything it touches, so it doesn't surprise me. And I wasn't going to make videos about feminism until it starts fucking with my video games.
One's about enjoying certain video games and movies and TV shows, and the other one is about creating equality and acceptance for all kinds of people. But
Well, if that was really true, then wouldn't you call yourself an egalitarian?
unfortunately, there's been this string of anti-feminist thought going on in nerd culture, and I've tried to avoid it for a long time, but now I think it's just time I confront it head on. So
The reason that this kind of sentiment is popping up in nerd culture is because feminism, as I said before, infects everything that it touches. It attempts to change and modify anything it can get its hands on. And if it gets to something and can't find something that it needs to change, it will invent reasons for it to get involved. That's why feminism will come into gaming, for instance, and say, there are too many male protagonists, there are too many straight protagonists, there are too many white protagonists. They'll treat these things like they're problems.
look, if you're a nerd, I'm not calling you an asshole or a misogynist or anything like that, okay?
Well, Riley, when you have videos that are like these, it does sort of lead one to believe that maybe that's not really an attitude you would have. Based on a lot of the things that you've said in the past, I'm inclined to believe that your default position on people is that they're massive pieces of shit. Especially if they don't agree with you, or God forbid, if they vote a different way. Plus, it's pretty obvious you're buddy McBuddies with Milo Stewart, whom many of you can recognize.
All white people are racist, all men are misogynistic, all cisgender people are transphobic.
So yeah, I'm kind of inclined to believe that you think gamers are a piece of shit. Maybe you will prove me wrong, but until then, you will have to forgive my skepticism.
Okay? I'm not here to attack you and tear you down. But if you're already discrediting my opinion because I said I'm a feminist,
Well, that should be the default position when dealing with feminists. Don't believe a word that they say. Just like a woman.
then we need to have this talk. Because I love nerd culture. I love that there are passionate people that can unite together around a shared love for certain things. I love smashing. I mean, playing Super Smash Brothers for hours with my friends. I used to play Halo and Call of Duty all the time. I still geek out over Harry Potter on a daily basis. And there have definitely been times where I just watched anime all night for hours and hours on end. And nerd culture is a huge, complex thing that can never be boiled down to one person or one train of thought.
Now watch me do it.
But it does tend to be mostly straight, cisgender men.
Well, that's because games are trying to appeal to their demographics. Most of the people who play hardcore games, not counting the mobile games, Candy Crushes, Bejeweled, that sort of thing. Straight, cisgendered men, that's kind of the demographics of people who play hardcore games. It's mostly male, almost like 99% of the human population is cisgendered. For those of you who aren't in the know with all the trendy words these days, cisgendered means that you identify as the gender of your body. And of course, most people are straight.
Even if it's by accident, nerd culture does manage to exclude women and LGBTQ+ people in a bunch of different ways. And that sucks, because nerd culture is supposed to be the culture of the neglected.
One thing that does bug me about these kinds of videos, about the way that people look at nerd and geek culture, is that they They think that it's 1986, and that's what the culture is. Like the last 30 years, they just haven't been paying attention. Nerd and geek culture is not what it used to be. It's mainstream now. People who play video games aren't a bunch of kids huddled in their mom's basements. Stereotyping gamers just is really difficult to do given the scope of how many there are and what kinds of people there are. Anybody can play and enjoy video games.
It's supposed to be the culture of the people who were never popular in high school, or who didn't have a lot of friends, or who were bullied for one reason or another. As a culture basically founded on being outcasts,
But it's not anymore.
I think it's absolutely necessary that we are as open and accepting as possible.
Well, aren't we? The Discord that I frequent is full of furries and bronies, Europeans, Americans. It's full of all sorts of different people with different proclivities. There are teenagers, there are adults from a variety of different backgrounds and jobs and career paths.
Otherwise, nerd culture becomes just as mean and elitist as the people who bullied us in high school. If you consider yourself a nerd, all I'm asking is that you hear me out and listen with an open mind and try to imagine what it would be like if you were a woman or a part of the LGBTQ+ community. So,
I hate this. Stop assuming that people who are in the LGBTQNLS negative alpha community quit thinking that they all think the same. I hate that. For those of you who don't know, I like dicks and I like vaginas. And I hate it when people say, well, there's the LGBT plus QNXA. We don't all think the same. Stop assuming we all think the same. We're a demographic. We're not a community.
here it is, 5 ways you can help nerd culture become more inclusive. Number 1, don't act like it's a miracle if a woman or a girl likes video games or other nerdy things. I know that my skit in the beginning of the video was a little exaggerated, but just a little bit.
I think one of the reasons people get the idea that women are not part of the gaming community, or that women are castigated, or that we are super surprised that they like games or D&D or Warhammer and all of that. I think the reason people think that is, for one, they're playing off of old stereotypes that, for the most part, just don't exist anymore. But two, it's because we have people like Anita Sarkeesian, Brianna Wu, we have Arthur Chu, Jonathan McIntosh, the whole feminist frequency bunch. There is a segment of society that profits from victimization and the victimization complex. There are tons of videos about the stunts that they pull, the skits that they have to do in order to drum up the idea that they're hated. After all, like I said in the last video, Brianna Wu, who made a video game on Steam, Revolution 60, she was caught attempting to harass herself, but she forgot she was logged in as a developer. When these people put out to the general public the idea that gamers hate us, that gamers don't like us, that men hate us, and men don't like us, a lot of people will go with it, just like you have. The internet is very much a talk shit, get hit kind of culture, and nobody on the internet is treated well. The internet's just a nasty, awful, horrible place, and it's been that way since always. You are not a special fucking snowflake because someone harassed you and you're a woman. Everyone gets harassed on the internet. Don't think you're special, but people weaponize that. They use it as a tool for publicity and money and funding.
I've actually seen people act that surprised when they find out that a woman likes video games or Star Wars or anything like that.
I do not believe you.
Even when it's intended as a compliment, it's really insulting to women.
First off, you don't speak for women. Don't think you speak for women. You were not elected as a representative for all women to speak on their behalf. Don't tell other people what insults them. Every woman as a human being, because you see, soft bigotry of low expectations, I have to keep bringing this up, but each woman individually can decide what does and doesn't offend them. And my attitude towards an offended woman is the same as my attitude towards an offended man. I don't care. If you're gonna get insulted when someone tries to compliment you, then you're an asshole.
Because nerd women have been around for as long as nerd men have been around. They've just been ignored and shoved to the sidelines because of some very systematic misogyny.
People always talk about systematic repression, systematic misogyny, and yet they never normally back it up. I would love to actually see systematic, as you say, misogyny. You're pointing at ghosts in the dark and you're jumping up into the air. Look, 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 it's systematic misogyny, you'll say. We can't see it. I don't believe it exists, and I'll continue to not believe it exists until you point it out. If there is systematic misogyny, then you have to tell us what it is so we can work together to destroy it. But you can't say because most women don't choose to go into, say, game development or game design, that there's something on the books, that there's some sort of a rule or a policy that's holding them back. Just off the top of my head, you mentioned how much you enjoyed playing Halo. Well, You know the person in charge of 343 Industries is a woman, right? Her name is Bonnie Ross. Was she the victim of systematic misogyny in video games?
The gaming industry and other parts of nerd culture have by and large been run by and for men. And when you act surprised that a woman likes something nerdy, you're insinuating, whether intentional or not, that it's unusual or weird for her to like that.
Well, it is. It's not insulting to point out that something is unusual or strange. It's just the acknowledgement that something is statistically uncommon. When I was younger, I used to be into Magic the Gathering, and I would go to Friday Night Magic at the hobby store down the street. Every Friday, we'd all get together and we'd play Magic, and I'd lose. I wasn't good at Magic the Gathering. I'm not. I'm hoping those things will be worth big bucks someday. But it wasn't unusual at all to see women there, but women were definitely in the minority. There was a person at the desk, I forget his name, I wish I could give him a shout out, but he was a really nice guy who worked at the hobby store behind the desk. He'd get people cards, he knew everything there was to know about anything nerd related. He once said to a woman who was in line with me, he said, "It's really good to see a girl in here. We don't get many girls coming in." And that was meant as a compliment. He was glad that we had diversity. Because nerd culture gaming, one of the reasons that it's so open to everybody is because we're all focusing on something that doesn't have anything to do with your race, your gender, your sexuality, any of that. We're focused on a game. We're all focused on the rules of a video game or a board game. We're all focused on a universe. We're focused on the lore of whatever it is that we're concentrating on. When you're sitting in a circle and everyone's looking at a board with characters on it, or when you're playing a game and there's cards strewn about and everyone follows the same rules, then it doesn't matter who's actually playing the game in the sense that it's equal for everybody.
The only thing weird about this whole situation is that nerd men have been pretending that nerd women haven't existed for such a long time.
You know, the Milo Stewart is really rubbing off on you. Ugh, that was a poor phrasing. But just because somebody is in the minority of something doesn't mean that the majority doesn't like them or dislikes them or has any sort of ill will towards them. For instance, look at the National Hockey League. There are hardly any black players in the National Hockey League. So, are the people who are hockey players in the NHL, are they racist? Because you're insinuating that the men who participate in nerd culture here are sexist by virtue of the fact that there aren't very many women in comparison.
Number 2, don't force people to prove that they like something. So you meet a woman and she says that she likes Star Wars.
Well, I would say that's wonderful because now there's this girl and I'm interested in her and I maybe want to be in a relationship with her to whatever level, and now I know that we share a common interest. Plus, you'll understand my thermal exhaust port innuendos.
And you manage to play it cool and you don't act surprised, but you don't really believe her.
Well, what reason do we have to not believe her? Oh yeah, you're just trying to set up the scenario that doesn't exist.
So you ask her questions like these. Who's Chewbacca's grandfather? Which hand does Luke Skywalker have cut off? What color is Yoda's lightsaber? But all of these questions are really just part of a test to find out if she's really nerdy or not. But men aren't subjected to tests like this.
Well, yeah, no one does this. And if you are the person who does this to people, then you're just an asshole. She's not claiming to have a pet dragon. She's saying that she likes Star Wars.
If you're a guy and you say that you like Star Wars, people just believe you.
Well, yeah, we believe everyone.
And it should be the same for women. If someone says that they like something, just let them like it. They don't have to be an expert with every single detail memorized. Number 3, advocate for more diverse characters in video games, TVs, movies, and books.
No, go fuck yourself. There's no way that this is a good idea at all, because what this does is it demands for the people who want to be creative that they have to follow certain rules. This stifles their creativity. What you're saying is that the most important facet of what characters are is what their gender is, or what genitals they prefer. Rogue One had a very wide variety of characters, but it wasn't better or worse because of them. It doesn't matter. If somebody wants to create a work of art, it's not your job to try and tell them what their creative vision has to be and whether or not it's good based on how many characters have dicks, or how many characters have prosthetic legs, or how many characters have vaginas. The Lord of the Rings isn't an amazing world and an amazing series of books and an amazing series because it's full of a bunch of white things. And The Witcher 3 isn't amazing because it's full of white things. And Pootie Tang is not a hilarious movie because it's a bunch of black people. I fucking love Pootie Tang. You, as someone who has no part whatsoever in the creative process of a piece of work, are telling the artist, the creator, the one with the vision, that they have to subscribe to what you believe is the correct ratios and the right quotas. If you say that there has to be a certain amount of, say, women in something, then that means that if you get to a certain point, even if there are more skilled or more appropriately cast men or actors instead of actresses for that role, then they're going to be pushed away. You can't discriminate in one direction without discriminating against the other direction.
Even though I love all different kinds of media, there's a problem with most of it.
Pre-orders and microtransactions?
It's a lot of straight, white, cisgender men.
Well, Riley, that's because you're a sexist and a racist. You've gone full circle. Because only the things you want are what things will apply for equality. For instance, feminists never talk about how there are too many male garbage men. They're never going to talk about how many male sanitation workers there are. They're never going to talk about how many male construction workers there are. They never talk about how terrible and sexist it is because men have to register for the draft and women don't. No, equality is only something worth advocating for when it suits their personal desires. Gaming is a meritocracy, as I've said before. And people like this don't want it to be like that. They want to have identity politics be inside of these things that we love. They want to make talent secondary to genitals or skin color.
Video games largely feature playable male characters with over-sexualized female characters.
Well, as a doggo who's sexually attracted to human men, let me let you in on a little secret. The men are sexualized too. Nathan Drake, I'd ride him like a carousel pony until closing time. And don't think for a second I don't want Geralt of Rivia to bend me over a barrel and show me the 50 states. Max Payne, Snake, Agent 47, fuck, Ellis from Left 4 Dead, he's a total cutie. I mean, hell, just Mass Effect alone, you have Shepard, there's Jacob Taylor, Caden's pretty good looking. Hell, we don't have to stop at humans. Rex? Oh, yes I would, in a goddamn heartbeat. Stop thinking only females are sexualized. They're not. You could be straight as a German streetlight, and you don't want to look at an ugly protagonist. You'd want to look at a handsome one.
Movies like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings have almost no women at all.
Well, the center of both of these series is about wars and conflicts, and it only makes sense that most of the characters are men because, well, you have a bunch of armies and soldiers and fighters, and since basically the dawn of time, warriors have been practically exclusively male, for a variety of reasons. I mean, humans are sexually dimorphic. The women will be weaker than the men for the most part. Women can have babies. There's an expendability that men have that women don't, especially in ancient societies. We're not going to get into the reasons so much. Being a warrior is a masculine thing, historically and culturally, so it makes sense that in places where there's a lot of fighting, in series that have a lot of fighting in them, wars, armies, battles, most of the players will be men. But it wasn't a man who killed the Witch King of Angmar, and it wasn't a man who strangled the crime lord Jabba the Hutt. Both of these series goes to show that women are capable of just as extraordinary heroic deeds as men.
And most of the characters in all of our media tend to be white.
Yeah, our media. I mean, look, America is mostly white. So culturally, it will be predominantly white. If you go to Bollywood, it's going to be a bunch of Indian people. If you go to China, it's going to be a bunch of Asians. I mean, shouldn't the reasons for that be self-evident?
You could argue that this is changing. Women have been playing more prominent roles in upcoming books and movies like The Hunger Games and Divergent.
Yeah, but those suck, so maybe they aren't the best example.
And FIFA 2016 will be the first edition of the game to feature playable female characters.
Wow.
But there's still a lot of work that needs to be done for people of color, women, and LGBTQ people. Representation is important.
Well, is it though? You see, most normal people don't need to see someone who directly represents them on a screen in a video game or in a sporting event or in a movie in order to feel like they can do the things that character does. For instance, Blizzard just came out with the fact that Tracer from Overwatch is getting hot with the ladies. Do you think all the straight women who are playing Overwatch and like Tracer all of a sudden threw down their controllers and said, well, now I can't identify as Tracer, so I'm not going to play as her? If anything, the fact that Tracer's into chicks is just something else we have in common.
People need to see themselves represented in our media. It inspires people and it sets the status quo for what's normal.
No, a normal, fully functioning human being does not need to see themselves personally represented in media. After all, I'm a bisexual, white atheist, cisgendered, male-centrist, Team Jacob trans canine. How often do you think I'm represented? Never, that's when. That's why I make these videos. It's a subtle cry for help. And the second part where you say that's what determines what's normal, well, that's only a problem if you consider things that aren't necessarily normal to be bad. And they're not.
I think we're on the right track, but we need to keep pushing for more diverse characters. Number 4, be wary of the language that you use. Have you ever been on Xbox Live?
Uh-huh.
It's like the comment section of the gaming community, just horrible slurs and terrible things that you never want to hear all in one place.
Well, take a highly competitive environment, coupled with the fact that everyone's anonymous, sprinkle over the top of that a little bit of human nature, and voila, a masterpiece. That is without a doubt the nature of the beast of all those things combined into one. That is Xbox Live, that's online gaming, and it affects everybody, not just you, Snowflake. Get used to the idea you're not special because someone called you a dirty tranny. I get called all sorts of names, piece of shit, faggot, fanboy, cocksucker, every day. But seeing as that I'm an emotionally stable adult, it doesn't bother me because those people need to just get good.
I had to quit that thing back in high school. But
Pussy.
certain words and slurs genuinely hurt people and make them not want to be a part of the community. For example, if you use rape as a synonym for destroying something, you can cause PTSD flashbacks for rape survivors.
Yeah, I'm getting Jed Whittaker flashbacks. While I'm sure that there are people out there who do have PTSD that's sexual assault related, and they do actually get triggered when people mention rape, and I'm sure out there's some people like that, you're asking every other person to tailor their language to make sure that that tiny, tiny, tiny little minority of people doesn't maybe get offended. Don't you think that maybe that's a little insane? I know this will make me sound like a huge dick, but if you get PTSD from someone saying the word rape in an online game, you need to get over it.
If we want nerd culture to be one of acceptance, we have to be willing to change some of the words that we use to make people feel more welcome.
No, I don't want people to feel included and welcome. Fuck those people. If you can't handle the words that someone says to you in a competitive, anonymous environment that is video gaming, I don't want you in the community. These overly sensitive attitudes that people have towards the things that come their way or the things that they see on a screen, if too many of these people get into communities, it destroys them. It turns them into something awful. It sucks the fun out of video games. Imagine if you wanted to go paintballing, but they made you wear a full suit of plate armor so that you didn't get a boo-boo. Because one day, some thin-skinned little pussy decided that he was gonna throw a tantrum and get all upset because somebody actually had the gall to return fire.
I think a lot of people have this mentality that you can choose what words offend you, and that people who are hurt by words are just being too sensitive. But
those people are being too sensitive. And if you get offended in these kinds of ways at words, then you need to work to improve yourself, not demand that everybody else cater to your fifis.
that's a really damaging way of looking at it.
Well, if you want to preserve the spirit of competition and fun in video games, then no, it's not damaging. It is necessary. It is vital to its survival.
Words have a lot of power because they have historical and cultural significance, but
no, the only power that a word has is the power that you choose to give it.
also a lot of times people associate certain words with traumatic events in their lives. Brushing off this whole—
Stop, pause, take a breath between sentences. This isn't a race. I feel sorry for people who do link words to traumatic events of their past. However, that's something that they're going to have to deal with one way or another. They are the ones who need to get help for themselves. They do not need to go around demanding that everyone else in society needs to change to suit them. That's why, as a gaming channel, I want to defend my hobby against this infectious idea of uber tolerance at all costs, this authoritarian mindset that people have that say you should change your behavior to fit the tiny, tiny minority.
Brushing off this whole argument by saying that people are too sensitive really makes nerd culture a place where only people who haven't been traumatized by particular slurs are allowed to be.
So, the overwhelming majority of the human race. Yeah, that sounds good to me. Yeah, that's fine with it. That sounds good. I think gaming is a place where almost everybody's allowed to be. Yeah.
Number 5, don't threaten people that criticize you or nerd culture.
Wait, what'd you say, you fucking piece of shit? Nah, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I feel like this last one should go without saying, but apparently it needs to be said. Don't send hate messages or rape or murder threats to people who criticize you.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't send rape or death threats to people. But I imagine you don't get too many rape threats, Riley.
Even if you disagree with someone, that doesn't mean that they deserve that. We can disagree peacefully.
Yeah, but coming from you, Riley, I don't know. After all, you have a video that's called Misgendering Trans People is an Act of Violence. So I think your grasp on what is violent and what is peaceful might be a little, skewed.
Even if your threat is hollow, they don't know that. And even if they do know that, it can still take a toll on their mental health. I know this isn't going to convince everyone.
Well, yeah, it's not going to convince anybody. Hell, you're being counterproductive. You're bringing more people to the other side.
I'm sure I'll find some very creative homophobic and transphobic slurs down in the comments. that I can convince at least a few of you. Throwing threats and insults around doesn't do anything to help your cause. In fact, it only proves why women and LGBTQ+ people don't feel safe in nerd culture.
Well, I don't want you to feel safe. Competitive online gaming, it's not the place you go if you want to have your feelings validated. You think these guys felt good when I took a shit on their chest? No, they did not. But they know that with enough practice, with enough determination, with enough training and enough dedication, they might be half as good as me one day. Improving yourself is a struggle. Learning is suffering. Sometimes it's painful for our potential to be chiseled out of the rough granite that is ourselves. Such is the nature of competition. Video games embody that spirit of competition, and people like you seek to destroy that.
Alright, well that is everything I have for you today. This video is a part of a series I'm doing for Everyday Feminism, a website dedicated to helping you stand up to and break down everyday oppression.
But oppression against men? Fuck that shit. We're feminists, not egalitarians.
I'll put some links down below so you can check out my previous videos in the series. And let me know in the comments section if you can think of any more ways that we can make nerd culture more accepting and more inclusive.
You know what? I'm actually going to do that. Right here, in this video, right now. But I don't think you're going to like the answer, because I don't think nerd culture, whatever that means these days, I don't think it should necessarily be inclusive and open to everybody. It's like football or baseball, it's like dance culture, it's like hip-hop culture, it's like any type of community, it's like any type of hobby. It's not for everybody, and that is part of what makes it what it is. Skydiving can be a wonderful thing, I'm certain, but it's obviously not for everybody. That doesn't mean that you say, well, skydiving as a hobby, we need to change skydiving so that everybody can do it, so that everyone can skydive and feel safe and secure. It would change the nature of what it is. If you can't take some shit talking online, if you can't handle competition, if you can't handle people just being jerks, the internet's not for you. It's rough and coarse and gritty and awful, and that's good. It makes it what it is. It gives it its character. But being run through the tumbler can make you a better person. Overcoming obstacles and being strong in the face of adversity, and I know it's maybe hyperbolic for playing video games online, but you know what I mean, that can make you better. I think people should try it, but I understand it's not for everybody. If you don't like it, then do something else. This isn't for you. Don't try to change what everybody else has to do so that you feel safe and sound and your feelings aren't hurt.
Thanks so much for watching. I love you all, and I'll see you next week.
Keep the song in your heart.
I'm basking.
As the dove do.
Playing out the throat. You standing high,
The mill here.
just as the grape